mercy fall on me. Everyone needs forgiveness, the kindness of the Savior, the hope of nations. Savior.
This is Chariot.
Hello and welcome to Action Time. My name is Eben Ijari, and I'm very excited to be here once again as we continue with our series on technology and in church ministry. Specifically, today we're going to focus on my role in digital evangelism. As you may know, we already have an expert in the field. His name is Al T'Challa. And last week we had a conversation about the COC Him app as well as the management software. And today we're very intentional about the conversation that we're going to be having. So I'd like to bring Al on the podium and, let's talk about our experiences in integrating technology in church outreach efforts. And let's also dive into some questions about the importance of our ministry overall. So Al, join me and let's have this conversation. Hi, how are you today? And happy Sunday.
All right, I'm very fine. How about you?
I'm wonderful. God is good. That's what I can say. God is very, very good. Um,
Nice.
yeah, and I know that last week our viewers were very engaging. They asked some good questions, and I'd like to also use this time to say a big thank you for taking the time out to enlighten us about the usage of technology in our ministry. So today we're going to be talking about my role in digital evangelism. And I'd like for you to first help us understand what exactly is digital evangelism and how does it differ from the traditional church outreach programs?
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, and good day to all our viewers, depending on the time you are watching this particular show. But before I go to answering the question that you posed, I would want us to first of all understand one thing, and I want to begin this with analogy. Okay, and I want to say this that in some ways, okay, we Christians today are comparable to a marketer of a product. And by that, I do not mean to say that the man we are preaching about is a product, but comparatively, we can say that the way in which we go about things is likened to that of a marketer. And let me tell you a little bit about what a marketer does, and then we can see how we can link the two and later on answer the question that you posed.
Mhm.
Now, if you care to know, a marketer is tasked to tell people about a particular product, a finished product.
Mhm.
So his objective is to let people be aware of it, the benefit that that particular product has, how it can benefit them, and all that. Now, when we bring that idea in our Christian life today, the same thing applies in there. We are not manufacturing the product. We are not the manufacturers of that product that we are going out there to tell people about.
Mhm.
God has planned this, and the Bible tells us that all things that pertain to life and godliness, He has given that to us. And to borrow the idea from the market, we can say that the finished product is with us here.
Mhm.
And therefore, what we need to do today is to go out there and tell people about that particular finished product. That's the gospel of Christ that we need to go out there and propagate. Now, unlike the worldly marketer that would use gimmicks, or that's to say tricks or devices to try and lure people to get to buy the product and all that. Our aim is not that. What we need to have in mind is Whatever we are doing, it should be rooted in sincerity. It
Mhm.
must be guided by scriptures, and the objective is not to make disciple for ourselves,
True.
but for He who sent us.
Hmm.
Now, let me just chip in this. You remember last week we discussed about the church management system, all right?
Yes.
Now, I have a group of people are who obtain to like help in advertising this, all right?
Mhm.
And they are kind of in quote unquote marketers. Now, I once told them that it's good you are willing to help advertise this, but when you are going out there to tell people, all right, tell them exactly what the system can do.
Mhm.
Do not tell them what you can do later on when the person comes and doesn't see those things that you mentioned to him or her. The person become like disappointed and all that. Now, the same thing that we also need to have in mind, whether we are online or offline, the message that we are preaching should be about the man who sent us, not we adding our feelings, our emotions to try to convince the person. Sometimes when you look at this, people go out there, mostly in our local congregation, they try to let people know the benefits like that will satisfy their flesh. All right, maybe when you come and let's say your family member is dead, the church will help you with this and all
Yeah,
those things. Like that
that's
is
not
not the
possible.
purpose,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's not possible.
with which you are sent. You are sent there to let the person know the truth that you found. First of all, the individual need to be convinced
Mhm.
about the word.
Mhm.
So later on, I gave them credential to the system, all right, to log in, go and see for yourself. The thing that I told you, is this so or I'm trying to deceive you? Go there, find out so that when you go out there to tell people, you know what to say. And it
Correct.
should be the same thing for it. We need to be convicted by the word, first of
Mhm.
all, so that when we are out there, it becomes part of us, not just looking for opportunity, but it becomes part of our daily lives. Whatever we do, it's part of us and all that. So coming down to the question, all right, when we are trying to say digital evangelism, all that we are trying to say is we are using this modern technology, all right, that we have available for ourselves to propagate that timeless gospel, all right, that old gospel that was preached right from the very beginning in Act chapter 2. It is the same thing that we are using this modern technology to propagate to those who are on this digital platform. So basically, if I want to define digital evangelism, we are using this modern technology to propagate that same timeless gospel to people out there.
Awesome. So the gospel doesn't change. The gospel remains the same.
It
We're
remains
just,
the same.
we're just living in the times, right? Just like how you just said, remember the times that we're in. We're not changing anything. We're just trying to work smarter, intelligently, and efficiently. So that's the bottom line of all these things. So in your perspective, right? Can you
Okay.
share? Can you share, or can you let us know, in terms of the use of technology and the traditional way, which one is more effective?
Okay. So if you are talking about effectiveness, all right, I would say both works. All right,
Mhm.
both ways. And you see, when it comes to the traditional way, you have that uh, one-on-one rapport with the person you are communicating with. You could express things better with the person, the emotions attached, and how you go about things. We cannot also do away with the digital platform that we have. People are also there, and they also need the saving message. And as
Mhm.
such, we need to be able to blend the two to get a better result. So, in terms of effectiveness, both must work together to achieve a greater result. So that's what I can say about that. You must be able to blend the two together at the end of the day.
Yep, I agree with you that we should be able to blend it together. But sometimes the struggle goes to like goes back to the whole user friendliness thing, right? And I feel like we need to also train ourselves to get off like our comfort zone, right? And just leverage on technology, because if we compare our congregations, right, in contrast to other believers and other believers, but if you're trying to understand, if I'm trying, the best way I can say is other believers, right, so you can
Yeah,
understand
I
what,
got you.
yeah, like they're leveraging on the same medium, and they're able to attract all of these folks to come into their churches. So why can't we also kind of like do the same thing? If we believe that we found the truth and we hold on to the truth of the one true church, why can't we just do the same thing to also kind of like go into the same field and again propagate the one gospel that it is in Galatians 1. So in terms of like assessing it, I feel like yes, you're right. Both model will work, but we also have to be very intentional as to how we go about it. And again, it always falls with strategy, right? Everything that you do, what is your strategy behind it? You don't just walk in and just do things. And I feel like that's where we need to get as churches of Christ, where we need to be very strategic with the approach when it comes to evangelism, whether it's being one on one or whether it's being on a digital platform.
Yeah.
Yep. So following up with that, I'd like to know what biblical principles should guide our approach to digital evangelism. And a big shout out to Charity TV. I know we have those digital lectureship annually, and that there's one coming up. But I want to hear from your perspective as an expert in tech, like what principles, and also being a Christian, what biblical principles should guide our approach to digital evangelism?
Okay, so what I want to say to that is this: whatever thing that we are doing, all right, is fundamentally based on the Bible. So first of all, either online or offline, it must be based on the Bible. That should be one like primary thing that we need to consider. We be online does not mean we say things that would be sweet in the ears of our followers.
Hmm.
That should not be our focus only. But I mean, fundamentally, everything should be based on the Bible. So we should have our authority from the Bible, and that authority is from Christ,
Hmm.
definitely. And secondly, it should be truthful, right? The fact that we want followers, and I think I need to just mention that the number is not the issue, all right? You could have the number in there, but in reality, they are not getting the message you are sending out there. So we should not be deceived by the number of followers that others may have. If you have 10 that are faithful and are desiring to get to know the truth, that should be our source of motivation, not the number of people that we have and all that. So that is so far I've mentioned two things. It should be biblical. Whatever thing that we are propagating out there should be biblical. That should be one. And the first principle that should guide us as we are doing this digital evangelism, and also it should be truthful. All right. And I think I mentioned that we should not use tricks or gimmicks or try to distort the gospel to suit our audience. And
Hmm.
secondly, because we have the love for those souls out there, all right, we should also like desire to send the gospel to them. It should not be only those who are say offline like that we interact with. Those who are online also need the gospel, and we should have that love towards them to send the same message to them. And lastly, I want to say that whatever thing that we are sending out there, right, it should be something that would edify at the end of the day. It should be able to build up whoever we are preaching to. Okay, it should not try to tear down. And I want to bring this scenario. I think you remember the scenario between the Ethiopian eunuch and then Philip, all right,
Mhm.
where he was reading the passage, he didn't understand it. The Spirit needed to send Philip to go and interpret that particular
Mhm.
passage to them, to him to understand.
Mhm.
The same thing, we need to be able to discern at what level do we need to bring in this. Maybe the person already understand or knows Christ. Where do we pick the conversation from for the person to easily come to the realization of the truth? So at the end of the day, okay, we must never change the gospel. And I think I mentioned that earlier. We should not attempt, all right, to change the gospel to appeal to the people that we are trying to use the dicta means to preach to. Uh, the the central idea is that these technologies are not any new doctrine, all right? They are not doctrine. The
Mhm.
doctrine is what we are preaching to them using this particular means. So whatever thing that we are preaching digitally, the principle that should guide us in summary should be biblical. It should be truthful. We should have that love for them, and whatever thing that we're doing should build up. That's at the end of the day, edify the people that we are reaching out to. The young. So that's what I can say about that.
Awesome. And that reminds me of again Galatians 1 verse 10, more specifically from 6 through 10. Like if anybody comes to you to preach this new gospel to you, may him or she be accursed.
Yeah,
That's like where you're going with this whole thing, right? And
exactly.
I appreciate that because we've we've kind of like programmed ourselves to say that, oh, this is foreign, we don't want to do it, and it doesn't really yield to like anything useful for the church. But we're forgetting that the web space or like the whole media space is like a broad world on its own, right?
Exactly.
Like
Yes.
literally, if you pick up a mobile device or a smartphone device, you can download like gazillions of apps and you're going to connect with gazillions of people, folks that you
Yes.
know, folks that you don't know. Okay.
Exactly.
And we're supposed to like propagate the gospel as it is. So, as young men and women in our congregation, we don't have any excuses to give anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Technology is on our fingertips. Like, you can argue and say that, especially like the older folks, they can argue and say that, yeah, they don't know how to use it and whatnot. That's fine. We can buy them the pass. But the young men and women in the congregations, how are you leveraging technology to the benefit?
And anyway, I want to chip in this that even the old folks, all right, they
Uh-huh.
also do not have much excuse, okay?
I was
In
trying to buy them pot. I
that,
was
like,
trying to pat. You
they
make
can
you
use
see.
WhatsApp, right? So if they can use yeah, so if they can use WhatsApp, that means they also have the means of still propagating the same message. Sharing is one thing that you can do. So this system or this platform that we have, they make things so simple for us. You can like,
Mhm.
you can share, just a button. You don't need to be so.
Makes sense.
And I think later on I'll add more light to that as we progress on in this discussion. So yeah, so
So
nobody
why?
has excuse.
Yep. So why don't you tell us about the most effective digital platforms for church ministry today, and how do we choose where to focus our efforts on? Because, like, as I said, on the web page, on the media page is a broad world on its own. How do we be very specific in where we target or hit home the messages that we want to like send the message to? Tech, you're there? I think I lost.
Okay, so what I want to
Oh, can you
yeah,
adjust?
hello,
Can
can you
you
hear
adjust?
me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay. While we wait for tech
Okay,
to
all right, okay.
go,
So
yeah,
what I want to say is, what I'm trying to say is this: we have so many platforms out there, and each of them we need to study to know what works in on that particular platform and what does not work. Let me say, for example, when you pick Instagram, for example, it does not support text only. Okay, so you would need to have image or emotion image like
Mhm.
a video to work in there. So if you do not understand how that works, there is no way you will be able to succeed in there. And when you go to something like TikTok, they support short videos. You can upload the content of 1 hour in there, it won't work. So you just basically have to understand how they work. And those platforms, if you are preaching about a particular topic, all right, you need to know what message or what part of the entire content you need to put there
Mhm.
that would encourage the person to go ahead, listen to the entire thing. So we need to be strategic on what platform we are on and how well we can make use of them. So we have a lot of them. If you come to, let's say, sell more, you want to do YouTube. If you come to live streaming, I mean, YouTube support that also, and that. But there are a lot of people also on Facebook. So you want to see how best you can use both together. And when it comes to, let's say, you want to write articles, you need to know which site works well. There are other sites that most people would not want to go. Something like a Pinterest, all right. There are a lot of people also over there, and people are writing content in there, publishing every day, and all that. So we need to just know what content we are discussing, which platform works best for it, which content do they support, and how do we make use of them. So, in terms of the platform, the most effective one, I would say that there's none that is effective, but we need to know how we can use those platforms to propagate the gospel more efficiently. But each of them has its own upper hand when it comes to the kind of content that we can discuss in there. So we must go everywhere to the people, whether they be online or offline, with the same gospel. And I think when we read a little bit about Act chapter 17, it go to tell us how Paul spoke in the synagogue, the market, and the home, and all that. So any platform available, we must make use of it. But there's no most effective, but each has its upper hand when it comes to the kind of content that you want to share.
Yep, I totally agree. And you see, I always say this, and I really believe it. God is so wise and so perfect in a way of doing things. Look at the transition, right? The
Okay.
disciples were doing their whole thing, going from house to house, going to marketplace, going to synagogues to preach. And then fast forward, when an era where you don't have to do all that crazy stuff. Okay, like you can anybody that has a smartphone can just literally flip a camera
Yeah.
and preach the gospel as it is. But many times, right, we give ourselves the excuses of, oh, I don't have the time. But here we are, we're scrolling through Instagram, we're scrolling through TikTok, we're scrolling through Facebook, like, share, sharing memes, all that stuff. And even back to what you were saying before, like even with our older folks, you're not even going to give them the pass as to them not being able to like use technology. I get
Oh
it.
yeah.
So what about them? Like they feel very intimidated with technology, right? So how can we help someone with limited skills to contribute meaningfully to digital evangelism? I mean, aside from just the sharing and like and stuff, what else can they do to like make sure that they contribute meaningfully when it comes to digital evangelism?
Okay, so this goes back to the fundamentals, all right. Say you have a preacher in the congregation that preaches for that particular church, okay.
Hmm.
Maybe you cannot preach. How about your encouragement? How about your prayers? How about supporting the person financially? I mean, these digital platforms Some would require you to subscribe to some services to do that. How about you using that? Maybe you can also tech savvy, but you have the money that you can donate to them. Why don't you do
Mhm.
that? So at the end of the day, you see, as the Bible paints that that each part of the body, when they come together, they make the full thing whole. All right. So
Yep.
it should be the same thing. When we contribute our strength and all that, at the end of the day, it's going to help better the the church that we want, the gospel that we want to propagate out there. At the end of the day, it will become more efficient and effective when we put all the resources together.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. I agree with you. So I like the picture that you've painted, right? Putting together resources, um, ensuring that there's collaborations among folks that know how to use that resource or don't know how to use the resource, and then let those that are experienced kind of like take the lead going forward.
Yeah.
So, assuming you're in a congregation, right, and you've established the digital evangelism,
Okay.
how do you measure success? And also, should we be focused on metrics like views and engagements? Because we're putting a lot of manpower in here trying to come up with a strategy to get to these audience and whatnot. How do we measure success after all of these things are done?
Okay. So I just want to state this that we must not confuse faithfulness with numbers. Okay. So this is what I'm trying to say. You can post the content and you get a lot of likes and comment and all that, but that does not mean that truly the message that you preach actually went down to solve a problem.
Hmm.
Now, the likes or the views would help us to better understand how people are interacting with our content, what kind of content we need to create more. So those are data that are available to us.
Hmm.
So if you see these statistics, how then do we optimize based on them? So maybe you post a content, you are seeing a lot of people reacting to that. Probably you had a content about Christian not obligated to pay tithe today. There are a lot of people who believe that Christians need to pay tithe today. So
Hmm.
if you are getting a lot of reaction, that means you need to focus your attention in there. But that should not mean that okay, because we are getting the number, it means that like people are actually liking it. But that is just giving a data that okay, this is where we need to channel more energy into to
Hmm.
better reach them with the truth. So we cannot say that the numbers mean that we have faithful followers. And I think we also need to base on this principle, right? That Paul discussed in First Corinthians chapter 3, the verse 6 to 7, about the planting and then the watering that they used. Okay.
Hmm.
So if we have that in mind, probably you start a work, someone will need to come and put it out there. Maybe you preached, I shared, and then someone commented. So based on that, then the whole thing is going. So someone may only be dedicated to preaching, may not have the chance of maybe sharing, but someone also has that strength probably to promote the content
Hmm.
to reach a number of people. So we just have to have that in mind, that planting and the watering analogy in mind, that when someone does this, I also contribute this way to get a better result at the end of the day. So that should be our focus. But we must not confuse the numbers with the faithfulness of people that are out there. So maybe through your sharing, you lead someone to obey the gospel. Who knows? So we should be ready to put all those things together to have a better result at the end of the day.
Yep, and I agree with you, right? I feel like most of the times, when it comes to the use of technology or the usage specifically of media, we may get discouraged easily when people are not really clicking on our stuff or even
Yeah.
sharing. But the analogy that you just painted right now, as in, even if I'm in the congregation, right, and I don't know anything about the media part of things, and the content has been posted on my church platform, the least that I can do is share it.
Yeah.
Because if I share it, I'm also sowing a seed somewhere for it to germinate. And
Yeah.
maybe it will lead to a discussion where someone will question me something about my faith. And even if I don't know the answer, I
You
can lead
ask.
it to someone to, like, help explain things to them. And I've also observed this thing that the church has evolved to a place where we're not really in the word anymore. Because, like, my parents used to tell me when they were younger, they'll go to evangelism and whatnot. And I kind of like contrast that against my generation. And I'm like, yeah, we don't do that. Like, we don't do that. What we do is we show up on Sunday if we want, and we just show up. But on the other side of things, we have a device where we can literally do 2 times more than what our parents did in their day. So I'm very
Yes.
glad that we're having this conversation, because it's a wake up call for all the youth and churches of Christ globally to, like, leverage technology, because our friends that are believers in other countries, they're doing it. So what is stopping us from using the same medium that they're using to, like, speak about their congregation or their church? Um, that's the point I want to land on. And again, if you feel like you're stuck or you've been doing this thing and you don't know where it's going, feel free to leave your comment or your thoughts here, and let's brainstorm it and come up with a solution to, like, some of the problems that we have in our churches.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have anything else to add on to that point in terms of measuring or, like, the metrics part. Like, if you have any other points that you want to add on.
Okay. So still with the analogy that I gave earlier when we started, the marketer of a product. Okay.
Mhm.
You see, for that worldly marketer, his aim is to get more customers. Okay. So he doesn't care if he need to use tricks to get people to come to know the truth. He doesn't, I mean, to get to
Buy
come buy
into
the product.
buy into what?
He doesn't. But okay, we are commanded that we buy the truth, we sell it
So,
not.
yeah.
Proverbs 20:23. All right. So in our attempt to see how well we are performing, you see, this platform gives us those statistics so we can better know what works and what does not work. And we should not be discouraged, as you mentioned, that maybe you make this content, maybe only one view. What happens if that's the only person who needs that? What happens if that person believes or obey the gospel through that content? So we should not be discouraged for the mere fact that people are not uh, we do not have that much view and all that. We should not be deceived by the number of views only. All right. Yes, it could be the case that the content is being like seen by a lot of people.
Mhm.
That could be the case. That should have the number. But it could be a case also that uh, there are a lot of people who are only be for a short while, all right, and leave.
Mhm.
And well, when that happens, uh, especially when you consider a platform like YouTube, all right, when you do not have that longer duration, that means your content is not going to be shown to a lot of people.
Mhm.
And when it comes to, let's say, we, the followers of a particular platform online that is discussing the gospel, the more we like, the more it gets shown to, in the context of Facebook, it gets shown to our friends and it gets recommended to other people. You see,
Mhm.
these days, this idea of like machine learning and all that, they are not rule based again, as in algorithm that only runs like kind of static. Okay, when this happened, this happened. No. So they are learning based on data. So based on your history and all that, those things come up to better recommend how or whatever content that you see. And this is obvious when your friends are liking some content, all right? You are likely to see those things on your timeline.
True.
You get it. But if let's say all your friends are liking maybe gospel content and all that, you get to see clean content on your timeline. But if they are liking those further things, you see same thing. So if you want to overcome those algorithms, you need to like correct content to see better things on your timeline. So that's what I want to add to that.
Exactly. I can't say much. I can't stress much on that. You see, they say birds of the same feather flock together. And
Exactly.
and if you're going to be on your social media platform and you're seeing what you're not supposed to see as a Christian, it's on you. So I'd like to know. I know last week we had conversations about integrating technology in our congregation.
Okay.
We spoke about the app. We spoke about the software management app. So, what are some practical ways aside from like the broadcasting or like the streaming services or on Church Online? Can we leverage technology? What are some practical ways?
Okay. So I think last week we spoke about my church system,
Mhm.
management system for congregations. And I think this at the beginning of this discussion, I mentioned something a little bit about that, where I started the case of the marketer and all that, telling them to be convinced about the platform first before they go out there to tell people about it. So, and I want to go back to last week's discussion where I cited that we need to understand our time, all right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not about the hard work we put in, but how smart we use these tools. Now, let's say, for example, a congregation closes somewhere 11:30, and the church secretary comes in there, and everybody knows that, like, definitely they're going to take like half an hour to finish all those rituals, like wedding year, funeral year, and all that. Now, most often than not, okay, members are going to forget some of the information. If you finish and you ask some of them, that, okay, what was the beginning of the announcement, what the announcer say and all that, most of them may not be able to tell you.
Mhm.
And some become very uncomfortable sitting for those number of hours and all that. But why not having a situation where we could send them message about those important information and all that? Probably in your WhatsApp group, you send a message, but someone would forward a lot of them that overshadow it and all that, and you may not be able to get the result that you want. Like,
Mhm.
we're using these tools, and I just want to mention one aspect of the church management system that we spoke about last week. That's the SMS aspect of it, where you can send personalized SMS. That is with the person name attached to the message you are sending, the person for welcome and all that. Also, when it comes to immediate message that or urgent message that need to be shared with the members, everybody gets to get it without even they be online or whatever. So if you want messages to get to the audience on time and all that, those systems are already in place. And last week I mentioned that these things are there to help us be more efficient, but not to replace us. And regarding the church system again, all right, you see, because of the attendance that are taken, all right, you have data that you can speak to.
Mhm.
And if a member is trying to backslide, all right, you can easily tell based on the number of time the person do join for
Worship.
meetings and all that. You can tell based on the data that you have available. So if there's a need for you to organize brethren to go visit and find out what is happening, you can do that because we have information available. You see, we are in like a data age, all right, information age. There are a lot of data that are generated each day. And
Mhm.
if we make use of them, we become more efficient and more productive in the ministry that we find ourselves. So also, I want to say that, let's say, for example, let me take the case for Ghana. You see,
Mhm.
when COVID came, it taught us a lot of lesson, right? That we need to go digital. All right. So when it comes to say giving, we have so many online platforms that you can use for giving, and we have one integrated in the My Church system where
Mhm.
members can do their giving directly on the platform so far as they are logged in and all that. So COVID taught us that it's not only giving physical money that is giving. We can also do mobile giving, all right? And is it when we bring all those things in play, it helps us to be more efficient. And I want to also add that considering the availability of the resources out there, when it comes to Bible studies, they make us more efficient. If you take, for example, courses on worldbibleschool.org, all right, they
Mhm.
have structured lessons in there for you that you can enroll as an individual. If a congregation want to do that or enroll their members, they have it available. You will have system where there are like interactive Q&A question and answers, and even for kids, all right, where you begin instead of they watching those cartoons and all, you begin to train them right from the start on the word of God. They go out there, learn them. So you see, when this become part of them, when they grow up, you don't need to see them for lessons
Mhm.
because they've started that right from the beginning and it is part of them. So at the end of the day, when we do all these things, we become more efficient. And I also want to mention that reading plans, when it comes to the study of the Bible, all right, there are apps that can guide us on what to read on a particular day, what to do this. And you see, when all these things come together and we make efficient use of them, it benefits us as an individual. We become conversant with the word that
Mhm.
we've come to believe or whom we've come to follow. And when it comes to going out there, either being online or offline, we won't find any excuse to share what we know with
Mhm.
others. So these are some of the resources that we today we need to make use of in the era that we find ourselves in. So that's what I would say for now.
Yep, indeed. The era that we find ourselves in, we are blessed. We have a lot of resources at our fingertips, and it's just up to us as to how we're going to use it. Not just ourselves, also, but our children and children, children. How to help shape them in the right way. Because lo and be like the way this world is moving, if you don't stick to God or find a way to be rooted in the Word, you're easily going to sway. And I'm not saying this just to say, as Albert mentioned earlier, right?
Okay.
Things are based on the algorithm. You can literally be on your social media platform. You may not like or click on something, but because your friend or someone that is within your network has clicked on something, something profane can come on your screen.
Oh yeah.
So we just need to be aware of the times that we're in and try to be wise in terms of how we navigate the technology that is on our fingertips. Now, Al, you brought up a point that is very interesting. You talked about COVID, and the question I'd like to ask you is revolving around relationships and connecting with folks. So, how do we maintain authenticity and genuine connection when ministry is now happening through screens? Because there's a problem where certain congregations currently have some of their members virtual, while the others are in person. And the reality is, those that are joining or logging on for worship virtually sometimes are not fully like edified. I can say that because I've tried to worship virtually and it's not the best thing for me. So how do we maintain the authenticity and genuine connection when ministry is happening through screens?
Okay, so this is the fundamental principle that should guide us. We have this inbuilt thing in us, all right? When someone is telling the truth, we can see. And when someone is telling lies, we can also say that. All right. Now, even on screens, all right, we're able to tell if what is being preached is real or it's falsehood.
Mhm.
So this is what I want to say. Even while we are doing this digitally, all right, either being by text, movie images or motion or
Live.
audios, all right, we need to still be raw, all right. We still need to have that sincerity with us, within us, wherever we go. It doesn't matter whatever platform you are using, we still need to be raw about what we are doing. So if we have that in mind, all that we need to get down there is that we need to show whatever life we live in, all right, it need to reflect the gospel. So maybe because it's virtual, maybe a preacher is living some kind of bad life in real life, but virtually is seen as a quote unquote an angel. And that should not be the case. We need to live out the gospel no matter whatever we find ourselves. So we still need to be raw even when we are doing this virtually. It doesn't matter whatever medium we are using. I don't know if I did justice to that, but if not, you can come up with a fuller question and I try getting that done.
Yep, I want to kind of like probe further. So the point I was trying to make is
Okay.
when we're worshiping, right, and there's two cohorts. So cohort A is going in person, cohort B is worshiping via Zoom.
Okay.
And the church is supposed to be a place where all the saints meet. But here's the case: there's two cohorts, right? And it's not like those in cohort B are transitioning to coming in and out. They're like consistently going to be virtual, and cohort A
Okay.
is going to consistently be um, in person.
All right.
I feel like at that's like one of like the downside thing. It kind of like creates a gap, right, where there is no
Yeah.
like genuine connection. So how do we maintain genuine connection within the ministry when cohort B is virtual and cohort A is in person? Um, since things are being done via the screen.
Oh, okay. So I still believe in this that there should be a need for brethren to meet in person, all right? And this is what I'm trying to establish. You see, when you consider Hebrews 10:25, okay, it's talking about our physical presence, we meeting together. So maybe weekdays, because of your schedule, you would want to join the meeting virtually. But
Mhm.
as much as depends on the individual, I still want to propose that you need to meet with brethren, see them eye to eye. Let's say, for example, you are a dad, for example, or let's pick a hypothetical father, all right,
Mhm.
that doesn't interact with the kids. Like, how do you like expect the children to be loved and all that? So, if the Bible wants us to have that physical presence with ourselves always, it knows why it is making mention of that. So we need to just, though these weather things are making, so we still have that opportunity to see eye to eye and all that. But that physical presence is different from we always meeting virtual and all that. So at the end of the day, we need to be able to blend the two. I mean, both worlds, when they come together, it will yield a better result. So we meet virtually. Maybe some information are there. We do not need to have physical meeting. We do that virtually. But sometimes also there's a need for us to have that physical presence of ourselves. So we just have to have that in mind that blending the two would have a better result at the end of the day.
Awesome. Awesome. And there's another thing that I like to bring up in this conversation.
Okay.
So you probably are familiar. Well, I shouldn't say you are familiar with the whole ethical issues concerning digital platforms, data breach and whatnot, right? So what ethical considerations should guide our digital evangelism efforts, considering that we have ministers, they have families, we're going to be putting their identity on platforms. What considerations should we put, or as a user coming on these platforms, what measures should I put in place so that I'm protecting myself overall?
Okay, so I just want to say this. We represent Christ both online and offline. All right. It's like, in other words, we are the representative of Christ on these two media. So whatever thing that we do must be subjected to his authority. Now, because we are using this digital platform, right, there's a need to consider privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say, for example, you had an interaction with someone, like it's a conversation you had with a person, let's say offline, and you come online, you describe the person in full details and all this. The person will not feel fine hearing that. So you need to consider the privacy of whoever story you want to tell online to people. People like to reserve their private life to themselves, and we need to obey that as such. And I want to also add up to that, in as much as we are representing Christ on this platform, all right, that we are trying to propagate the gospel to those present in there, we also need to respect the truth. We do not go in there to send out false promises or sensationalism, all right, to just let people be afraid and probably say, okay, I want to get baptized, and all that. That should not be our focus. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, all right, regarding the my church system, and I was so emphatic on that, all right. I told them that, quote unquote, I developed the system and I know how it works, all right. So whatever I'm telling you, that is what it does.
Mm-hmm.
It does not do anything beyond this. All right. So it should be the same thing in our minds. We representing Christ out there, that he has given us his doctrine. We are not there when things were planned. He has given it to us to go and share with others. And we must not alter the message. If we try that, we will find lies, and we do not want to be that worldly marketer that we mentioned earlier. We want to be found faithful before him. So the message that we are sending out there must be in truth. We must not promise anybody any promise that the scripture does not give, and no sensationalism. And I want to also chip in what I mentioned early on regarding how, let's say, most of our congregation, we go out there, try to tell the people the thing that will benefit them. And in reality, they do not understand the rationale behind they getting baptized and all that. And if someone comes online and bring that same ideology, it's going to affect the whole thing. Though you are trying to help, but genuinely you are not helping. You are rather compromising the whole thing. So we need to have that in mind. And lastly, okay, because this is online media, all right, we must, as much as possible, refrain from strife. So maybe someone comes under a particular content and then make some uncomfortable like comment or discussion under that particular post. You see, we need to have that love for them. Probably the person meant fight, but take it easy on the person and try to go down and have that peaceful discussion with the person. Do not retaliate when someone try to insult another person. You see, and nobody can trace you. Okay, you can use some fake name
Mm-hmm.
out there because I mean there's no means of verifying who this person or tracing the person back and all that. So you can use false identity, come on this platform and like try to abuse people and all. But the reality is that if you online, all right, God knows it is you that is doing that. Maybe maybe when you want you cannot tell, but I don't know. God knows it's you doing that. So we must respect the truth, respect the privacy of the people we are sharing content with, and lastly, we must refrain from strife or any fight out there because we are representing Christ online just as we do offline.
I agree with you 100%, right? And it goes back in Ephesians saying we always need to speak the truth in love. Um, and to add on to it, like speaking the truth and making it and speaking it in love, if you post that comment or that statement on the media, it stays forever. You can be harsh and all that stuff. That also stays forever. And you can claim that
Yeah.
you deleted it or not, whatnot. But people take screenshots, people screen record stuff. So, just be mindful of how you interact with folks on the media because it doesn't, whatever goes there stays there forever. You can never take
Oh
it
yeah.
back. You can never take it back. So we're kind of like bringing everything to an end, but I have a question. We've
Okay.
we've spoken about the privacy of our speakers or people that you utilize media to teach.
Yeah.
We spoke about how to integrate our older folks to also be able to like use technology. You've defined what exactly digital evangelism is. So, can you also help us to understand how can we effectively reach younger generations through digital ministry, without compromising the core theological principles? Because I think that you've established that already. But when it comes to younger folks, they're much more about, oh, this looks good, so let's add this. Oh, why aren't we just like adding this particular sound or whatever to make this reach a larger audience? How do you address that particular thing?
Okay. So to answer that, I wanted to take a reading from the book of Second Timothy, chapter 1, the verse 13. And I'll be reading from the NKJV. And this is what it says. Hold fast the pattern of sound words which you have heard from me, in faith and love which are in Christ Jesus.
Mhm.
So, what I want to say about that is the fact that we are trying to reach younger generation, all right, does not mean we should dilute the truth. Okay, we don't go about diluting the doctrine, the
Mhm.
gospel to suit their time. I mentioned this earlier on that same gospel, we are only using this media that we have available to ourselves to send to those people available on those platforms. We are
Mhm.
not changing anything about it. So if we are to follow the pattern of the sound words which Timothy heard from the apostle, right? In other words, that we are aware of, then under no circumstance should we attempt to dilute these things to suit this generation. And we also need to have this in mind that we show Christ in relevant and unchanging. So uh, God is not, we can subject God to our time, all right? We rather need to subject our time to God's.
Yep.
Okay. So I mean, let me say God is constant and
Yes.
we are
Okay.
variable. So, so we are variable. So we rather need to uh, adjust our things to suit that of God, not God trying to adjust his nature to suit ours. So we cannot attempt to do that. And I just want to say this, that is it when we try to start from our case, and I think I mentioned this earlier. When we start from our case, let's say those who have come to know the truth, when they begin from their case, right from the younger age, it becomes part of them, and they can teach their peers same thing even before we I mean they go out there. So
Mhm.
at the end of the day, the way that we have, we must stand firm on it. The doctrine that we have from Christ, we are not going out there to try to massage it to suit the younger generation. You see, when we do that, it's like we know the truth, we want to compromise it to suit those who we are interacting with.
Mhm.
And that becomes dangerous, okay?
Yep.
So that means we are trying to teach any other gospel. I think Paul mentioned that
Yeah.
apart from what has been preached to us. And
Mhm.
I think the idea of the marketer and then the product comes in here very much relevant, in that the marketer is not the manufacturer of the product.
Yes.
The manufacturer is there. He has
Mhm.
already built it. You are not there with the person when he was manufacturing it. You didn't contribute anything to it. Your own is to go and then tell people about the product.
Mhm.
Same to us, we are not there when this doctrine were given out. We have them laid down for us in this book. So it is our responsibility to say it as we see it. We don't go massaging it to just pleasing those we are telling this to. So that's what I can say about that.
True. And again, you've done very well, like explaining things to the core as to what it means to leverage technology in our digital evangelism space. So, like I said, the big thank you for this insight. But before we close up everything, what final encouragement would you offer to those considering their role in digital evangelism?
Okay, so I just want to say this. We should have the desire, first of all. And it doesn't matter whether you have a studio or a platform or not. The fact that you know the truth and you have that love for the souls out there, if you are willing to speak up, you can be used by God to achieve a greater purpose. And I just want to also add up that we should not treat these digital spaces as neutral ground. This platform are also part of our mission field. And as Paul mentioned this in the book of First Corinthians, chapter number 9, the
Mhm.
verse 22. But maybe we read a little bit about it. That he has become all things to all people, that he may by all means save some. Now, when you consider that passage a little bit deeper, it says it became weak to the weak, that he may save the weak. It
Mhm.
became this and this. Now, the digital platform that we have in there, all right, we need to be experts of those platforms that we may be able to preach the gospel to those who are on those platforms. When it comes to Facebook, need just know how you work things out, how to add like hashtag to reach a better audience. When it comes to like mention people, how do you do those things? You can easily learn them and know them. So we need to be adaptive on whatever platform that we find ourselves to better propagate the message that was once and for all delivered to all. Now, maybe you do not have this capability. You can stand in here to preach, but you can write articles. All right, you can give encouragement. And let me just throw more light on the particular article,
Mhm.
the scenario for the article. Maybe you can write very good articles. You do not have the platform, but someone knows how to build those platforms. Come together with a person and let that serve as a means of you propagating the message to those also who will be ready to say the truth online and find it. And I think last week I mentioned this that it's one thing writing the article and one thing making it search engine optimized. All right. If you
Correct.
write, that's not the end. You need to optimize it so that when someone searches this online, the person can find it. Maybe the person searches only a particular keyword. When the person searches that, is the person able to get that article that you wrote?
Mhm.
So those things we need to learn them, and as we're doing that, the gospel can go far. So whether we are online or offline, at the end of the day, same doctrine must go out there, and we must do that faithful as we are doing it not for ourselves but for the man Christ that sent us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tack. And for our viewers, thank you so much for following along with us to this point. I hope you've gotten something that you're going to take with you and be practical of it, not just be a listener and just be here and give us comments or like or share it for us, but rather be practical of what we've discussed. We also need to remember the time that we find ourselves in, right? As Tak has already explained, the time that we find ourselves in, we need to leverage on the technology to the best of our ability. And again, it's all centered back on Christ, our Savior. So thanks for joining us tonight. And God willing, next week we'll pick up another topic and delve in that. Wishing you a wonderful week and thanks for tuning in for Action Time and Charity TV. Good night. Bye bye.